I had only 25 left in my pocket, nowhere to sleep, and no one to turn to. But then I spotted an abandoned garage on the edge of town. Everyone else ignored it, but something about it whispered that my life was about to change forever. Hey, before we get started, make sure to subscribe and join our YouTube family. Smash that like button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now let's dive into the story. I still remember the exact weight of that last $25 in my pocket. It didn't feel like paper. It felt like pressure, like expectation, like a final chance that didn't come with instructions. By then, I had already learned what it meant to have nothing. Not the dramatic kind of nothing people talk about online. Real nothing. The kind where your phone battery dies and you don't rush to charge it because who are you even expecting a call from? The kind where you stop checking your messages because nobody is looking for you. The kind where hunger isn't sharp anymore, it's just a quiet, constant background feeling you get used to. I was 18, but I felt older. Not wiser, just worn. Getting kicked out wasn't some big cinematic moment either. No shouting match. No dramatic storm outside. Just a quiet sentence from someone who was tired of me being there. You need to figure it out. That was it. And suddenly everything was my problem. For the first few days I told myself it was temporary. I'd figure something out quickly. Find a job. Crash somewhere stable. Get back on track. But days turned into a week. Then another. And slowly something started changing inside me, not physically, but mentally. I started noticing how invisible you become when you don't belong anywhere. People don't look at you the same. You don't walk the same either. You hesitate more. You think twice before entering places. You measure yourself against everything. Even small things feel out of reach. Like a proper meal. Like a good night's sleep. Like dignity. That morning, I woke up in my car with sunlight hitting my face too early. My neck hurt. My back felt stiff. And for a moment, I just sat there, staring at the cracked windshield, trying to convince myself to move, because moving meant facing the same question again. What now? I checked my pocket. 25. That was everything. No backup, no safety net, no one to call, just that. I remember laughing a little, not because it was funny, but because sometimes your brain doesn't know how else to react. All right, I said to myself. This is it. No big plan, no perfect idea. Just a decision that I couldn't stay stuck anymore. I started driving without a direction. No destination in mind, just moving. Sometimes movement itself feels like progress even when it isn't. The city slowly changed as I drove. From busy streets to quieter ones. From clean storefronts to older forgotten areas. Places where buildings looked like they had stories. No one bothered to remember anymore. And that's when I saw it. At first it didn't stand out. Just another broken structure among many. But something about it made me slow down. An old garage. The metal door was covered in rust, peeling in layers. The concrete around it was cracked, like it had been ignored for years. A faded sign hung loosely nearby, barely readable. For sale. It looked like a joke. Like something no one would take seriously. And yet, I couldn't. Look away! I parked across the street and just sat there staring at it. I don't know how long. Minutes maybe. Or longer. There was nothing special about it. No obvious value. No sign that it could change anything. But there was something else. Silence. No one around it. No attention. No competition. It felt untouched. And for some reason that mattered. I stepped out of the car slowly, like I was approaching something fragile. The air smelled dry, dusty. The kind of place people pass without thinking twice. I walked closer. Each step felt heavier, not physically, but mentally. Because deep down I knew this was a choice. A weird one. A risky one. Maybe even a stupid one. But it was still a choice. And when you've been stuck long enough, even a bad decision feels better than no decision. I looked around and noticed a small shop nearby. An old man sat outside, leaning back in a chair like he had nowhere else to be. He watched me approach, his eyes narrowing slightly. Not suspicious, just curious. You looking for something? He asked. I nodded toward the garage. That place. It for sale? He followed my gaze, then let out a short laugh. That? He said. You serious? I didn't answer immediately, because I wasn't sure, but something inside me didn't want to back out now. Yeah, I said finally. He shook his head, smiling like he had heard the funniest thing all day. You don't want that junk, he said. Roof leaks, probably full of rats. Worth nothing. Maybe he was right. Actually, he was probably completely right. But I had already seen something different, not in the garage itself, but in what it represented. A chance, even if it didn't make sense. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the $25. "That's all I've got," I said. He looked at the money, then at me. Something in his expression changed. Not pity, not exactly. More like recognition. Like he understood something without me saying it. For a moment he didn't speak. Then he sighed. "Fine," he said, "take it. Saves me the trouble." Just like that. No paperwork. No negotiation. No second thoughts. The garage was mine. And suddenly, that $25 felt lighter. Not because I had less, but because I had something now. Something real. I walked back toward the garage, keys still in my hand. Heart beating faster than it should. This was it. No turning back. I stood in front of the metal door and placed my hand on it. It was rough, cold, solid. For a second I hesitated. Because what if this was a mistake? What if I had just spent everything on something completely useless? What if this changed nothing? But then another thought came in. What if it did? I pushed the door. At first it didn't move. Then with a loud scraping sound it slowly gave in. Dust fell, air shifted, and a smell hit me instantly, old, heavy, untouched. I stepped inside. The light was dim, broken only by thin beams coming through cracks above. The space felt smaller than it looked from outside, closed, quiet. Still, I waited for something to happen, for some sign, but nothing did. It was just a garage, filled with junk, old tools scattered everywhere, broken shelves leaning against the walls, rusted cans, torn boxes, random pieces of metal that didn't seem to belong to anything anymore. It looked exactly like what everyone said it was, worthless. I walked further in, kicking aside small debris. Every step echoed slightly, making the space feel emptier than it already was. For a moment, doubt crept in, strong this time. "What did you do?" I whispered to myself, because now it was real. The money was gone, and this was all I had to show for it. I sat down on an old wooden crate, staring at the mess around me. My mind started racing, replaying every step that led me here. I could have used that $25 for food, for gas, for something safe, something predictable. But instead, I chose this. Why? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, staring at the ground. And that's when something caught my attention. It was subtle, easy to miss. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. The back wall. It didn't match. Not completely. The rest of the garage looked worn down, aged naturally over time. But that section, it looked different. Cleaner, smoother, like it had been replaced at some point. I stood up slowly, my earlier doubts fading just a little, curiosity replacing them. I walked closer, eyes focused now. There were no obvious signs at first glance, but something about it felt intentional. And then I noticed it, a faint outline, almost invisible, but definitely there. A rectangle, perfectly shaped. My heartbeat picked up again, not from fear, from possibility. I stepped even closer, raising my hand toward the wall. And just before I touched it, one thought crossed my mind. Maybe this wasn't a mistake after all. And maybe this garage wasn't empty, not really. My fingers finally touched the wall. It felt solid, too solid. Not like the rest of the garage. Those walls were rough, cracked, uneven. This one smooth, almost deliberate, like someone had taken time to make sure it stayed hidden in plain sight. I ran my hand across the surface slowly, tracing that faint outline again. My breathing changed without me realizing it, slower, deeper, more focused. This wasn't random. Someone had done this on purpose. The question was why. I stepped back a little, trying to see it from a different angle. Sometimes distance makes things clearer. The sunlight shifting through the cracks. Above hit the wall just right, and there it was again. That rectangle, now more obvious than before. My heart started pounding harder. Not fear, not yet. Something else. Anticipation. Because suddenly this wasn't just an abandoned garage anymore. This was a mystery. And for the first time in weeks, I felt awake. Fully awake. I started looking around more carefully this time. Not like before, when everything just looked like junk. Now I was searching, observing, thinking. Every broken shelf, every rusted tool, every piece of trash, anything could matter. Minutes passed. Then more. Frustration slowly crept in again. If there's a door, there has to be a way to open it, I muttered. But nothing stood out. No handle, no lock, no visible mechanism. Just a wall pretending to be nothing. I kicked a small metal can across the floor, the sound echoing louder than expected. For a second I thought about giving up. Maybe it was sealed permanently. Maybe whatever was behind it didn't matter anymore. Maybe I was just overthinking everything. But then I remembered something, that feeling I had when I first saw this place. That pull. It wasn't gone, so I kept going. I moved toward the old shelf near the corner. It looked like it would fall apart if I touched it, but something about its position felt off, like it didn't belong exactly where it was. I grabbed it carefully and pulled. It resisted at first, then suddenly shifted with a loud scrape. Dust exploded into the air, making me cough as I stepped back. And that's when I saw it. Behind the shelf, a small metal lever. My eyes locked onto it instantly. It was old, but not as old as everything else. Slightly cleaner, less rust, like it had been used, or at least meant to be used. I felt a strange mix of excitement and hesitation. This was it. This had to be it. But at the same time, this was the point where things became real. Up until now, I could still walk away, still pretend this was nothing, still go back to the same life I had yesterday. But if I pulled that lever, there was no going back to not knowing. I stepped closer. My hand hovered over it. For a second, I just stood there, thinking, not about what was behind the wall, but about myself, about how I got here, about how I had nothing left. And maybe that was the answer. Because when you have nothing, you stop being afraid of losing. I grabbed the lever and pulled. At first, nothing happened. Then, a deep clicking sound echoed through the garage. Loud, heavy, like something old waking up after a long time. I froze. My eyes snapped toward the wall. For a moment, silence. Then a low rumble started. The wall moved. Slowly, almost reluctantly. Dust fell from the edges as it shifted inward, revealing a dark space behind it. The sound was rough, mechanical, like it hadn't been used in years, but it still worked. That alone sent a chill down my spine, because it meant one thing. This wasn't just hidden. It was designed, carefully, intentionally. The opening widened inch by inch until it was big enough to step through. I didn't move right away. I just stared, because the darkness inside felt different from the rest of the garage. Heavier, deeper, like it was holding something, waiting. I swallowed slowly, my throat dry. "This is crazy," I whispered, but my feet didn't listen. They moved forward, one step at a time. The air inside felt cooler, still, undisturbed. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing shapes, structure, something far from random. And then I saw it. This wasn't another messy storage space. It was organized. Perfectly. Shelves lined the walls, filled with boxes that were stacked neatly, not thrown around, not forgotten, placed with purpose. There was a table in the center, solid and clean compared to everything outside. Papers were spread across it, maps, documents, notes. Everything felt preserved, like time had stopped in this room while the world outside moved on. I stepped further in, my heart now racing faster than ever. Who did this? I whispered, because whoever owned this place wasn't careless. They were precise, smart, and they wanted this hidden. But the biggest question wasn't who, it was why. I moved toward the table, shining my light over the papers, lines, markings, symbols I didn't fully understand yet. But I could tell they meant something. This wasn't junk. This was information. Important information. And then, my light shifted slightly to the right, and everything inside me paused. There, against the far wall, was a safe, but not like the one outside. Not rusty, not broken. This one was clean, almost untouched, like it didn't belong to the same world as everything else. I slowly walked toward it, each step heavier than the last, because deep down, I knew this was it. This was the reason the room existed, the reason it was hidden, the reason I ended up here. I reached the safe and stood in front of it. For a moment, I didn't move, didn't breathe properly, just stared. And then I noticed something small, a piece of paper, taped to the front. I leaned closer, my flashlight steady now, and read the words written on it. Only open when you're truly desperate. I felt something shift inside me when I read that. Not fear, not excitement, recognition, because whoever wrote that understood something. Something most people don't. I let out a quiet breath, almost a laugh. Too late for that, I said softly. My hand slowly moved toward the safe, and just before I touched it, one thought hit me. What if this doesn't just change my situation? What if it changes me? And without giving myself time to think twice, I reached for it. My fingers wrapped around the handle of the safe, and for a second I didn't move. Not because I was scared of what was inside, but because I knew whatever happened next, There was no going back to who I was before this moment. Just hours ago I was a guy with $25 and no direction. Now I was standing in front of something hidden, something intentional, something that clearly wasn't meant for everyone to find. I took a slow breath, then I pulled. The safe door opened without resistance. No lock, no code. That alone was unexpected. For something this carefully hidden, I thought it would be harder, more complicated, like it would test me one last time before revealing anything. But it didn't. And somehow, that made it even more serious. Because it meant one thing. Whoever left this didn't want to keep people out. They just wanted to make sure the right person found it. I opened the door fully and pointed my flashlight inside. No gold, no stacks of cash, no jewelry, just files, neatly arranged. For a moment I just stared. And I won't lie, there was a flicker of disappointment. After everything, this is what I find. Paper? But something inside me didn't let me close it. Not yet. I reached in and pulled out the first file. Dust slid off the edges as I opened it. Inside were documents, official-looking ones. Property records, addresses, ownership details. I frowned slightly. What is this? I muttered. It didn't make sense. Why hide something like this? Why go through all that effort? For paperwork? I grabbed another file. Then another. Same pattern. Different locations, different properties. But all of them had something in common. They were abandoned, or at least marked as neglected, unclaimed, or forgotten. My mind started working faster now. I placed a few files on the table and began going through them more carefully. There were notes, handwritten, detailed. Some pages had maps attached. Others had small observations written in the margins. Owner deceased, no heirs. Legal dispute unresolved. Access point behind west entrance. Estimated value if restored, high. I stopped. Read that last line again. Estimated value, high. I slowly looked around the room again. The shelves, the organization, the effort. This wasn't random. This was research. Years of it. Someone had spent a long time building this, tracking opportunities no one else noticed, seeing value where others saw nothing. And suddenly, everything started making sense. This wasn't a hidden treasure. This was a system, a blueprint, a way of thinking. I felt something shift inside my chest, not excitement exactly. Something deeper, clarity, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking at what I didn't have. I was looking at what I could do. I flipped through more files faster now. Each one felt like a piece of a bigger puzzle. Old storage units, abandoned garages, forgotten plots of land. Places people ignored, places people overlooked, places people walked past every single day, without realizing what they were worth. My grip tightened on the papers. Why leave this behind? I whispered, because someone like this, someone smart enough to build all of this, wouldn't just disappear, unless they wanted someone else to continue it. I looked back at the safe, then at the note again, only open when you're truly desperate. Now it hit differently. This wasn't a warning. It was a filter, because only someone desperate enough would take a risk on something like that garage. Only someone with nothing left would actually open that safe, and only someone willing to think differently would understand what was inside. I sat down slowly at the table, the file spread out in front of me. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about survival. I was thinking about strategy, and that changed everything. I picked up one specific file. It had more notes than the others, more detail, more focus. A storage unit, not too far from here, marked clearly, circled, with a simple note written at the top. Start here. My heartbeat picked up again, not from fear, from purpose. Because suddenly, I had direction, real direction, not guesswork, not hope, a plan. I leaned back slightly, staring at the file in my hands. This was it. The first move, the difference between staying stuck and stepping into something bigger. But then doubt crept in again. Quiet. Sharp. What if this was all wrong? What if the information was outdated? What if I wasted time chasing something that led nowhere? I closed my eyes for a second, and then I remembered where I was just this morning, sleeping in my car, with no plan, no future, no options. I opened my eyes again and looked at the file. This is still better than nothing, I said quietly. Because even if it didn't work, at least I was moving. At least I was trying something different. And maybe that's all it takes. I stood up, holding the file tightly now. But just as I turned to leave the room, something else caught my attention. Something I had missed before. On the table, beneath a stack of papers, there was another note. Smaller, hidden, like it wasn't meant to be seen immediately. I slowly reached for it, and when I flipped it over, my breath stopped. Because this one wasn't about where to start. It was about what comes after, and what it said made everything feel bigger than I imagined. My fingers tightened around that second note as I read it again, slower this time. If you're reading this, you're not just desperate. You're ready. But understand this. This only works if you stop thinking like everyone else. I stayed still for a moment. Those words didn't feel random. They felt directed, personal, like whoever wrote them knew exactly who would end up here, and what kind of mindset they would have. I swallowed slowly and kept reading. Most people look for value in what shines. That's why they miss what matters. The real opportunities are always hidden under effort, risk, and discomfort. If you're not willing to face those three, walk away now. I let out a quiet breath. Effort, risk, discomfort. That was basically my entire life already. So what did I really have to lose? I flipped the note over, expecting more, but that was it. No name, no explanation. Just a message, a challenge. I placed it carefully on the table and looked back at the file marked "Start Here." Everything inside me felt different now. Not lighter, not easier, but sharper, focused, because now I understood something I didn't before. This wasn't about luck. This was about thinking differently, acting when others hesitate, seeing what others ignore. I grabbed a few more files and quickly scanned them, trying to understand the pattern. Each one had details most people wouldn't bother noticing: entry points, timing, legal gaps, potential value after small improvements. This wasn't about buying expensive things. It was about recognizing overlooked ones and turning them into something valuable. My eyes moved faster now, connecting ideas. If even one of these worked, it could change everything. But it wouldn't be easy. Nothing about this was easy, and maybe that was the point. I stepped out of the hidden room slowly, taking one last look behind me. The shelves, the table, the safe, everything still, silent, waiting. It felt strange leaving it, like I was walking away from something bigger than I fully understood. But I knew I'd be back, because this wasn't the reward. It was the starting line. I pushed the hidden wall back into place as best as I could. It didn't seal perfectly, but it was enough to keep it unnoticed again. Then I stepped out of the garage. The sunlight hit my eyes instantly, making me squint. For a second I just stood there. Same street, same broken buildings, same quiet surroundings. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had, because now I wasn't just someone surviving day to day. I had direction, a move to make. I got into my car and placed the file on the passenger seat. My hands rested on the steering wheel, but I didn't start the engine right away. Instead, I stared at the file again. This small stack of paper was now the most important thing I owned. More valuable than money, because it had potential. And potential was something I hadn't felt in a long time. I finally started the car. The engine struggled for a second before coming to life. Just like me, I drove toward the address written in the file. Every turn felt heavier, more real, because now it wasn't just an idea. It was action. The road slowly shifted again, from familiar to unfamiliar. The buildings became more industrial, less maintained, more forgotten. Perfect. Exactly the kind of place people ignore. I pulled up near the location and parked a little distance away. From the outside, it didn't look like anything special. Just another storage facility. Old, quiet, half forgotten. A few units looked active, but most of them closed, untouched. I stepped out of the car, holding the file in my hand. My heart was beating faster again, but this time it wasn't uncertainty. It was awareness, because I knew this moment mattered. This was the first real test. I walked slowly along the row of storage units, checking the numbers, matching them with the file, until I found it. The one circled. It looked exactly like the rest. Rust on the edges, a slightly bent door, nothing that screamed value. But now I knew better. I glanced around. No one seemed to be paying attention. Good. I stepped closer. According to the notes, the lock wasn't properly maintained. Check left hinge, it said. I crouched slightly and looked. There it was. Loose. Subtle. But enough. My pulse quickened. This was real. I reached out and applied a little pressure. The metal shifted, just a bit, but it was enough to tell me. The file was right. Everything about it was right. I leaned back slightly, my mind racing. If this worked, if there was actually something inside, then this wasn't just a random discovery anymore. This was a system I could repeat, a path I could follow, a way out. But just as I was about to push further, I heard something behind me. Footsteps. I froze. Slowly turned around. A man was walking toward me. Not fast, not aggressive, but direct. Like he knew exactly where he was going. My grip tightened slightly on the file. For a split second, all the confidence I had built started to shake. Because this moment, this exact moment, would decide everything. Was I just some broke kid messing around where I didn't belong? Or was I someone who finally found something real and was ready to claim it? The man got closer, his eyes locked onto mine, and just before he said anything, one thought hit me hard. What if this wasn't the only test I had to pass? The man stopped a few steps away from me, not too close, not too far, just enough to make it clear he was paying attention. For a second, neither of us spoke. The air felt heavier than before, the kind of silence where your brain starts racing, trying to predict what comes next. "Looking for something?" he finally asked. His tone wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't friendly either. Neutral, measured, like he was testing me without saying it directly. I straightened up slowly, trying not to look nervous, even though my heartbeat was louder than anything around me. "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice steady. "This unit." He glanced at the door, then at the file in my hand, then back at me. "You own it?" he asked. Simple question, but it hit deeper than it should have. Because the honest answer? No, I didn't. Not officially. Not legally. Not yet. But if I hesitated, if I looked unsure, this moment would slip away, and something inside me refused to let that happen. "Working on it," I replied.
Not a lie.
Not fully the truth either, just enough. He studied me for a second longer. Then something unexpected happened. He nodded slightly. Like that answer was enough. "Most people don't even notice these," he said, gesturing around at the storage units. "They see rust and walk away." I didn't respond, because I knew that already. I had been one of those people, until now. He stepped a little closer, but his posture stayed relaxed. "You new around here?" he asked. "Yeah." Another short answer. Careful, controlled. He looked at the unit again, then back at me. "There's two types of people who come looking at places like this," he said. "Ones who are lost, and ones who are looking." I felt that, because just hours ago, I was definitely the first type. "And which one are you?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately, not because I didn't know, but because I wanted to make sure my answer wasn't just words. "I'm trying to be the second," I said. He held my gaze for a moment. Then, he smiled. Not wide, not obvious, just a small shift, like he respected the answer. "Good," he said.
Because this place doesn't reward the first kind.
That sentence stuck with me. Deep. Because it wasn't just about this storage unit. It was about everything. I nodded slightly, then looked back at the door. "I think this one hasn't been touched in a while," I said. He followed my gaze. "Years," he replied. Owner stopped showing up. Payments stopped. People forget things faster than you think. I already knew that from the file, but hearing it from someone else made it real. "So what happens to it?" I asked. He shrugged. "Eventually, auction, clearance, or it just sits there until someone smart enough notices it." Smart enough, not lucky, not rich, smart. That word hit differently now. I stepped closer to the unit again. My hand moved toward the loose hinge. This time I didn't hesitate. I applied pressure. The metal shifted again. A little more this time. The man watched quietly. He didn't stop me, didn't question me, just observed, like he was waiting to see what I would do next. I took a slow breath, then pushed harder. The hinge gave in with a low creak. The door loosened, just enough. My heart started racing again. This was it. The moment. I grabbed the edge of the door and slowly pulled. It resisted at first. Then it opened. Dust moved through the air as light entered the unit for the first time. In who knows how long, I stepped back slightly, letting the air settle. Then looked inside. At first it looked like nothing, just shadows, shapes, covered objects. But as my eyes adjusted, details started forming. Boxes, furniture, covered equipment, not trash, not random junk, stored items, left behind, forgotten. My chest tightened slightly. Because this was real. This wasn't just theory anymore. This was proof. The system worked. I took a step inside carefully. The floor creaked slightly under my weight. Everything felt untouched. Preserved. Like time had paused here. I reached for one of the boxes and brushed off the dust. Opened it slowly. Inside, tools. Good ones. Not broken. Not useless. Just unused. I let out a quiet breath. "This is it," I whispered. Behind me, the man spoke again. "Most people would have walked past that door," he said. I turned slightly. "But you didn't." I shook my head. "No." He nodded again. "Good." There was that word again. Good. Like I had passed something. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Because finding something once is luck. Doing it again, that's skill. I stepped further inside, my mind already thinking ahead. What else is here? What can be used? What can be sold? What can be turned into something bigger? Because now I understood, this wasn't about this unit. It was about what comes next. And as I looked deeper into the shadows of that storage space, one thought became clear. If this was just the first step, then I had no idea how far this could go. I stepped fully inside the storage unit, my hands brushing against forgotten boxes and covered furniture. Each item seemed like a piece of someone else's past, a story paused and abandoned. But I didn't feel like I was just taking from the past. I felt like I was learning what most people never bother to see, learning the kind of patience, attention, and courage it takes to notice opportunity where others only see dust and rust. The man behind me remained silent, watching. His presence wasn't threatening. It was quiet acknowledgement, as if he understood that this moment wasn't about confrontation, it was about recognition. Recognition that I had changed in the past few hours. From a desperate kid with 25 eyes to someone willing to see value where others walk away. That was growth. That was strength. I moved slowly, touching old tools and boxes, feeling the weight of possibility in my hands. My mind raced. This wasn't just a storage unit. This was a lesson, a blueprint, a map to understanding how to take what others disregard and turn it into something that could change your life. And for the first time, I saw myself differently. Not as a victim of circumstance, not as someone left behind by the world, but as someone capable of seeing, thinking, and acting differently. The man finally spoke, breaking the silence. Opportunities like this, they're everywhere. People just don't notice. Most are too scared, too lazy, or too focused on what looks easy. You're here because you're not any of that. You see what others ignore. I nodded, realizing he wasn't just talking about storage units. He was talking about life, about mindset, about how you navigate the world when it refuses to hand you anything, about how you create advantage when no one else is paying attention. I looked at the dusty files, the abandoned items, and the hidden spaces. It all made sense now. That garage, that hidden room, the safe, the note. None of it was about instant wealth. It was about perspective, about understanding that what seems worthless to the majority can be priceless to someone willing to notice. And I understood the real secret. It wasn't the garage. It wasn't the files. It wasn't even the storage unit. The secret was the change inside me, the ability to act when others hesitate, to see when others overlook, to take responsibility when everyone else gives up. That was the power the note hinted at. Only open when you're truly desperate. Because desperation doesn't just make you bold, it makes you aware. It forces you to stop chasing illusions and start noticing reality. Raw and unpolished. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of it all. For years I had believed that life was something given to you, that luck, money, and circumstances decided everything. But now I knew the truth. Life isn't something handed out. Life is something you find in the cracks, the overlooked corners, the hidden spaces, and then you make it yours. I left the unit with a new vision. The man followed silently, giving me space but also keeping watch. Outside, the world looked the same. Rusted gates, cracked asphalt, empty streets. But I saw it differently. Every abandoned building, every discarded item, every ignored opportunity wasn't a sign of decay. It was a challenge, a chance, a test. That 25 garage had changed nothing externally, but internally, everything. It taught me patience, awareness, courage, and perspective. It forced me to act when I had nothing left. It made me see potential where others only saw despair. And that's the meaning I carried forward. What looks worthless, abandoned, forgotten, can be the beginning of everything. You just have to notice it, have the courage to step inside, and the patience to see the value no one else does. I walked away from that place with a full chest and a quiet confidence. My life wasn't fixed overnight, but it was mine now. Every decision, every action, every risk I took from this point on was intentional. Every door I chose to open, every path I chose to explore, I did so with awareness, not luck. Because the real treasure isn't money, gold, or objects. The real treasure is perspective, the ability to see what others ignore and use it to transform your own life. And from that day forward, I never walked past an abandoned garage, a broken street, or a forgotten corner without asking myself, what am I missing that everyone else overlooks? Because sometimes the thing everyone ignores is the thing that can change everything.